Welcome, everybody. Joe Tarnowski with ECRM, and I have with me back again Ashley Bray, who is the editor-in-chief of Bar Business. And today we're going to give you an update of what's happening in the bar and restaurant segment. We're going to talk a little bit about grocery too. But so, Ashley, thanks for joining us. And I want to talk about takeout. We've seen throughout the past several months, restaurants and bars, they've been opening indoor, closing indoor. Over here in New York, they were open for 25%. They shut down, and now we're going to open at 25% again. I think in Jersey, it's boosting to 35%, something like that. But throughout all of this, takeout and delivery has been a steady thing. Can you talk a little bit about the state of takeout and delivery and how it's kind of evolved throughout this whole period?
Sure. It's been interesting because takeout and delivery, while it may have been a part of a bar's offerings, it was never like the main source of income, right? And I bet you if you talk to any bar owner, they would never have believed that this would be the end-all be-all for them for months at a time. So I got a couple stats I wanted to throw out just to kind of put some context on this issue. So the National Restaurant Association has released a lot of numbers throughout and has kind of been a great guideline during this time. And they said that at the beginning of 2020, prior to the pandemic, 63% of restaurant traffic was off premises, and that jumped to 80 to 90% in the second and third quarter of 2020. So obviously there's a demand for this. People want it, people need it. They don't want to always eat in, and a lot of times that's not an option. So they expect that to-go traffic to drop as hopefully the vaccines work, people return to indoor dining, the restrictions are loosened a bit, like you said, Jersey going to 35% or whatever it is. But it's going to take a while. So to go and take out and delivery is here to stay, I think, for the rest of 2021 and possibly even into 2022, depending on what happens with this vaccine. And it's in demand. People want it. People like the convenience of it. And I think it fits for bars right now because people always went there for the socialization factor, right? I want to meet my friends. I want a place to sit, chat, dine for a couple hours. Bars no longer have that. So now it's a matter of them fulfilling the need for convenience. So I don't want to cook. I've cooked so much during this pandemic. I've made sourdough, let's say. I've baked every baked good there is to make. Like, I'm looking for convenience. So I want to call up my local bar, my local restaurant, and I want to be able to get what I want quickly and efficiently. So those are a lot of kind of the drivers behind it. And then to-go cocktails, that's been the biggest revolution since the Prohibition, right? I mean, it's huge. And that was in demand as well. People wanted that. Couple factors here. So millennials are kind of leading that category, and they're saying of off-premises customers, millennials will go to a restaurant, 53% of them, if they know they can get to-go alcohol as well. So if they can get, let's say, their Chinese food in a Scorpion bowl to go or a Mai Tai to go. So people really want that. And I think it was something that was on the horizon, but the pandemic really fast-tracked it. Yeah. People kind of really want this now. Last year, 33 states had some sort of law allowing to-go cocktails. And now Ohio, Iowa have made it permanent. So it's going to be a thing long past the pandemic. And in 2021, so many states now are either extending that to-go legislation or introducing legislation to make it permanent. So I don't see this going away anytime soon. I think it's going to be kind of a lifeline for restaurants, and it's going to be a channel that they need to pay attention to even after we are on the other side of COVID-19. So
what's interesting is it's blurring the lines because when we typically, like at ECRM, when we thought of off-premise adult beverages, we were thinking of grocery store, the grocery channel or liquor stores, things like that. But now the restaurants are a big source of that.
It's so true. And it's a channel that they might not have paid a lot of attention to before because, like I said, it was never a big profit driver. It was just something they offered in addition to their main services of indoor dining. And because of that, a lot of people aren't looking at it in the way that they should be. So let's say prior to the pandemic, you had somebody in your venue, an hour, 2 hours. You could influence them. You could, influence their guest experience. You could make sure they're having a good time, really put your best foot forward. A lot of bars and restaurants no longer have that right now. So the only way you're getting through to that customer is through to-go. So you better make sure it's a great experience. A couple things that I would put out to bar owners and operators is to really pay attention to the presentation of the product. First of all, I wouldn't make anything to go if it doesn't travel well, because you're already setting yourself up for failure. By the time it gets to the customer, it's not going to be great. I'd also brand your to-go products. So if you have a logo for your bar or anything like that, put the sticker on the to-go package. Print cups with your bar's name on it. Some of the other really cool things people have been doing are unique vessels. So instead of just a Tupperware container to go with your cocktail in it, people have been turning to pouches, like an adult Capri Sun type of thing. Mason jars have become really popular. So just something to kind of up the experience for people when they get to go.
So the vendors have been coming up with innovations around this to-go concept as well.
Most definitely. I've talked to some brands who actually will give these to-go vessels to customers to use because they know it's going to help sell their product, their their alcohol, their spirits. So. And
are most of these disposable, or are they getting into the kind of like a a growler type situation with these like the craft bars would do?
That's a good question. So it's funny because we had such a focus on sustainability prior to the pandemic, and then that kind of slid because we went to single use, we went to a lot of plastic, and now I think bars and restaurants are responding to consumer demands in the sense that they don't want the plastic anymore. They don't want the single use because it's not great for the environment. So there are companies out there that offer environmentally friendly options. So things that biodegrade or that aren't plastic. The issue too is if you're putting a hot meal into a plastic container, a lot of people worry about what kind of chemicals are leaching into my food. There's all of that concerns about BPA. So people are turning to glass. People are turning to more environmentally friendly options in that sense.
So what about, I know in the beginning of the pandemic, when everything shut down, there was a lot of virtual happy hours going on and bars and restaurants getting involved in that, people doing it themselves. Is that still happening? I'm getting a sense it's not happening as much as it did in the past. Are those types of things still happening?
I think they're still out there, but there's a lot of Zoom fatigue. You've probably heard that term. It's just people are tired of getting on the internet and on these virtual meetings. I think in the start it was kind of it was a new thing. It was fun. It was exciting. I got to see people face to face. Now I think people are just over it. Some bars still do it. They put an education spin on it. So it's a little bit more of like, okay, here's how to use the spirit, or let our bartender, demonstrate how to make this cocktail. So there's some of it, but I don't think it has the pull that it did at the start.
Yeah. It seems like it's faded a little bit, but people still want to make cocktails at home. So what kind of innovations have you seen in the bars and restaurants as far as giving consumers the tools to make these cocktails at home?
Well, that's the other side of to-go. So a lot of times people will make the cocktail and put it in a to-go vessel like we've been talking about. But then there are kits. So a lot of bar owners recognize consumers' desire to become the at-home bartender. So they'll put a mixer, they'll put a spirit. Some of them will even put the garnish and the particular type of ice you need into a drink. There's a local establishment where I'm from, and we visit it quite often. And so we'll get, let's say, a barrel-aged Manhattan, and they'll have the drink, they'll have the large square cube, they'll give you the orange peel, and you just have to kind of assemble it all together. And so it's a matter of how far you want to break down that cocktail, whether it's all the ingredients separate, things like that. So
that could be an opportunity, especially for the grocery chains, to put together more of, they're not going to be selling to-go cocktails, but they can sell all of the ingredients to make your own, along with some education around it.
I think so. I think it's an opportunity that if off-premise establishments like grocers aren't doing it already, they should be. RTDs, or ready-to-drink products, are a big part of that as well. They are just super easy to package with. Some of them are non-alcoholic and require you to add alcohol. Some of them already have the alcohol in it. So there's a lot of options out there right now that make it easy. Bottled mixers are really popular. A lot of times you have the small bottles that make a great option to kind of throw together this, hey, here's a mix for a margarita, here's a mix for a pina colada, whatever it is,
So speaking of RTDs, I mean, is the White Claw trend still strong? And, all of those canned cocktails?
I'll tell you, White Claw has some competition. It's no longer just about spiked seltzer. So at the start of this, that was kind of the only thing that was, the only game in town, so to speak. But now there are so many products. I mean, you can get canned cocktails of all types. You want a canned Paloma? You can get it. You want a bottled margarita that you just have to pour in a glass? You got it. It goes back to that convenience factor. I think consumers are so beat down right now from the pandemic and working and just day-to-day life in general that they're looking for something that's easy and convenient, and RTDs really provide that. Plus, they're easy to travel. I mean, pop a canned cocktail in a to-go package, and it's great. A lot of restaurants too are canning their own cocktails. So there's a lot of products out there that allow you to seal cans on premise, and so they'll do that. They'll mix their own, proprietary in-house cocktail, can it, seal it, and then give that to consumers. The only downside to that is aluminum. There's a shortage of aluminum right now just because of the tariffs and everything to do with the pandemic. So supply chain has become a little bit of a problem in that section, and that's why people are now turning to RTDs if they can't can it themselves.
Well, I mean, it does make so much sense. It's just from the travel perspective, it's so easy to just bring cans, and for me, I like the convenience of it. They have a lot of good ones out there, but it's just so convenient. Plus, I'm not someone who wants to make my own drinks. If it's in a can and it's easy to consume, that's it for me. So the other thing you talked about before, you mentioned the marketing and promotions. And I think I wanted to dive a little bit deeper on that because I really think it is critical, because now that marketing you do around the takeout and before the takeout, what you're doing on social and your website and all that, is so much more important now than it was ever before. And trying to get customer engagement with this, because you don't have that in, that inside dining or hanging out ability to engage your customers.
It's so true, Joe. And you hit the nail on the head. It really starts from the moment that customer logs onto your website or visits your social media page. You want to make it as easy as possible for them to, find you, first of all, and then to say, okay, I want to order. You want to make sure that it's very easy for them to figure out how to order online, have buttons everywhere, links to your online menu. And then once they're on your menu, a lot of places have kind of slimmed down their menus, which is fine in terms of, inventory, things like that. Make sure it's easy to read, make sure it's easy to go through the ordering process. And then when you're actually packaging that food and delivering it to the customer, that's your one impression, right? It's your first and only impression. It's the only way you're interacting with that customer. And it may be for the first time, it may be for the 30th time. Either way, you want to make sure it's a good experience. So branding is huge in this. If you're just sending out a Tupperware container with your cocktail in it, you're missing an experience that you could be providing for that customer. Look into really unique vessels. If that's not your thing, brand it, put a sticker, find a company that'll print your bar's name or logo on there. It's little things like that go the extra distance for the customer and make them remember your establishment. So I went and got takeout at a place this weekend, never had been to this restaurant, and they packaged everything up nice, and they had actually put handwritten notes on each of the packages, like, it was an Italian restaurant, like Mangia or Enjoy or thank you so much for, visiting us. It was just a quick little note. It was handwritten, but it was that extra difference that made the extra mile that, in my mind, made them go the extra mile to say, hey, we really appreciate your business and we want to show it.
And maybe even go back to the old magnetic stickers for the refrigerator so that, it's front and center all the time.
Totally. And that's something that people don't throw away. It's going to be on their fridge and they're going to be staring at it for the next however many months. So that's a great idea.
I still got a couple on my fridge for different things, but now it seems that would make a lot more sense to do.
Definitely.
Now, because it's a takeout and delivery world, has the presentation of the beverage become a little bit less important? Like if I order a cocktail delivery, I'm assuming that it's not going to be or look as good as it does when the bartender makes it for me. I mean, so have expectations gone down on the consumer side?
On the consumer side, I think on the presentation side, sure. You do what you can in terms of things we've already talked about. Vessels, making sure it shows up to your house in one piece. A lot of like the special effects of certain cocktails. So, maybe you light the orange peel on fire. That's no longer a thing. Or a cocktail smokes. You can't recreate that at home. So I think you really need to pivot and focus on the quality of the ingredients. Really promote your best sellers, your most popular cocktails. Kind of, bring your list down, distill it down to what you do best and what the consumers want. And I think you'll succeed. So it's not so much the world of Instagram cocktails anymore. At least in the to-go market. So you have to kind of focus on other aspects of the drink.
Well, there's an opportunity. You can send the peel and then teach them, show them how to light it themselves.
Exactly.
And,
Yeah.
you know, they can have that part of it.
Yeah, and say we are not responsible for any fires or injuries that may happen as a result of this.
Well, yeah, then you have a whole liability. That's a whole nother legal discussion that we could get
That's a whole
into.
other, yeah.
But so also you have, you know, some bars, because they're already doing takeout and delivery, they're kind of doing more, acting more like grocery stores. I remember way back when the pandemic first started, the Italian restaurant across from me just turned into a marketplace, and you know, they sold the homemade pasta separately, the sauce separate, and all that. Now, obviously, they're back to a full functioning restaurant. They have a great outdoor setup. But are you still seeing some of that?
Absolutely. A lot of people are looking for family style meals. So some of those prepackaged stuff really works well. The Italian restaurant I visited this weekend has a to-go menu, but it also has prepackaged and frozen options. So they almost serve as a grocer in that sense. A lot of it has to do with inventory. So if you're a bar, especially, and you have some old inventory that you're trying to push out the door, and you know that isn't moving as quickly because you don't have that in-house traffic, becoming a liquor store, so to speak, is an option. So there's a bar in LA called Madre, and they are a mezcal bar. They're known for their extensive selection of mezcals, a lot of stuff you're not going to find in your typical liquor store. And so what they've done is they've taken some of their higher end, more unique options and made them available to sell. So people will actually buy the bottles as gifts, or if they're a collector and, you know, a big mezcal fan, they will go to them because they know they will be able to find things that they can't find in a liquor store. So if you're a bar with a spirits niche, especially if you're a whiskey bar, if you're, you know, a bourbon bar, take advantage of that and start offering your stuff, you know, as a liquor store option.
Yeah, and you could even sell merchandise, some branded T-shirts or hats or whatever.
Definitely. And a lot of bars did that at the start of the pandemic. They made it, you know, some of the proceeds would go to bartenders in need and things like that. But they put funny sayings around COVID on there. And so that type of stuff, people want it. And it gives them another way to support a local bar in their area aside from takeouts.
So what do you think of the, I mean, I think that whole Uber Drizzly deal is something that's kind of indicative of the importance of takeout and to-go cocktails.
I'm happy you brought up third-party apps because it's a thorny issue. It's good and it's bad. So third-party apps are great because they offer bars exposure, increased exposure to more consumers they may not necessarily have on their own. If you don't have an online ordering system, these options like Drizzly and Uber Eats and DoorDash give you the ability to have an online ordering system. The downside, though, is a lot of these fees. So some of them were charging 30% of your, you know, total cost of the meal. So then you either have to eat that cost or you have to work that into what you charge for the meal or the cocktail. I think it's going to be interesting how Uber bought out Drizzly in that sense. I mean, it shows that this is here to stay. Yeah. Like Uber would not have made that type of an investment if it wasn't. But I think from the bars and restaurant side, and I'm always going to be loyal to this side of things more than anything else, they need to be careful how they tread with these third-party apps. The National Restaurant Association actually released this is a mouthful, public policy principles for third-party delivery. Layman's terms, rules for the relationships between third-party apps and restaurants and bars. You know, so some of the things they brought up were transparency on fees, contractual transparency about terms, policies, things like that. And then one of the key things is, as a best practice, third-party delivery companies should offer restaurants access to the information regarding orders that have originated on their third-party platforms. So let's say I'm Bar ABC, and you didn't order directly through me, you ordered through Uber Eats. I should have access to that information, right? Data is king. It's so important right now because you want to really target your consumers in, you know, the most focused way you can, and data enables you to do that. So I would say work with these third-party apps if you choose to do so, to get all of the data you can, you know, to be clear on any fees you're going to be charged, because it's a double-edged sword. You need them in a lot of ways, but they draw back from profits in a lot of others too.
What do you see post-pandemic? What's the state of takeout and delivery going to be? Because I'm assuming post-pandemic there's going to be a rush to indoor dining. You know, everybody that's been missing it is going to flock to it. But I think there's still going to be a lot of people interested in it.
Yeah, I don't think it's going away. I think it's the convenience factor. People are going to crave that even after the pandemic. So that's here to stay. I think people are going to want to go cocktails. A lot of times, if they don't want to sit in a restaurant, they're going to want the option to take it to take it to go. So it by no means is going to go away. I think the on-premise is going to take back some of that channel share, and the number of people who order off-premise or look for that to-go delivery option is going to go down naturally. But I am looking forward to the pent-up demand, Joe. The National Restaurant Association came out with kind of a silver lining number, so to speak. So in January 2020, adults said that they were not eating on premises as often as they like. 45% of adults said that. And so then when they asked them again in April 2020, 83% of people said they were not eating on premise as often as they like. And I'd imagine that number has stayed steady or gone up as we have lived with COVID much longer than any of us had predicted or hoped for. So I think that there is going to be such a surge and a pent-up demand that I hope it really kind of brings restaurants and bars back in a big way, because they're going to need that traffic.
Well, we can only hope that they can, you know, stick it out through the next few months until we get to that point.
Exactly. And a lot of places are even allowing restaurant workers to get vaccines. New York, Detroit, Michigan, they're actually on, you know, the next wave of eligibility for vaccines. So that maybe will instill a little bit more confidence in consumers. So there's good days to come.
Yeah. The only problem is the consumers aren't all going to be vaccinated. So some of them may still want to stay home, but I know around here, certainly everybody wants to get back into the restaurants, but it is going to be a little bit, it's going to take time. I think they're planning, the Biden administration mentioned, I think by the end of September, there'll be 300 million people vaccinated.
Yeah, so they're doing
what they can. We'll be getting close.
Hope, fingers crossed that we get out of this thing, because I know a lot of people's social lives revolve around bars and restaurants. So, well,
fortunately, I think that at least this summer, or once the weather gets warm, I do think that the bars and restaurants are kind of smarter about how they operate their outdoor settings, and that with the combination, you know, they're all set up now. Now everybody by me, they have these beautiful setups. They're pretty weather resistant. After a bunch of failures in November, December, with, you know, storms knocking down these tents, now they're all these wooden structures. They're solid, so they got their stuff together. I think that once it warms up, they're already going to start to see a booming business, because they're set up, they're experienced, they've been through this before, they know how to do it correctly, and they're just going to, you know, go full steam ahead with it.
I agree 110%. And those parts of the U.S. right now that are currently dealing with winter and snow I think are really looking forward to the spring and summer. And a lot of consumers are too, especially the ones who don't feel comfortable dining in. I think they view an outdoor table as another option. So
thank you so much again. And I look forward to seeing you moderating the roundtable during our on and off premises adult beverage session. And we'll be definitely catching up again soon.
Definitely. Thanks as always, Joe. It's fun.
Take care.
All right.